Hello everyone. In continuation with the topic that is organism and its environment, we will learn about the major abiotic factor and how the organisms they are being interrelated and show coordinated uh, functioning with these abiotic factors. So in biology, abiotic factors can include water, light, radiation, temperature, humidity, atmosphere, acidity and soil. The macroscopic climate often influences each of the above, and the pressure and sound waves may also be considered in the context of marine and subterrestrial environments. Abiotic factors in ocean environment also include aerial exposure, substrate water clarity, solar energy, and the tides. Consider the differences in the mechanics of the C3, C4, and CAM plants in regulating the influx of carbon dioxide, which you have already studied in your previous class, that in the 11th standard, to the Kelvin-Benson cycle in relation to their abiotic stressors. So C3 plants have no mechanism to manage photorespiration, whereas C4 and Crassion acid metabolism plants, that is CAM plants, utilizes a separate PEP carboxylase enzyme to prevent photorespiration, thus increasing the yield of photosynthetic processes to the certain high energy environments. So let's study the different abiotic components which are given in your book, and the very first abiotic component is the temperature. So temperature is an abiotic factor that is strongly influenced by the sunlight. Temperature plays an important role for animals that cannot regulate their own body temperature, such as reptiles. So temperature is the most important ecological and relevant environmental factor, as the temperature of the land varies seasonally. You can see the different life forms, that is you can see whenever there is change in the season due to the rotational axis, which differs from the revolution of the earth around the sun. So when the temperature decreases progressively from the equator towards the pole and from plains to the mountain tops, it ranges from the sub-zero level in polar regions and high altitude to the temperature which is greater than 50 degrees centigrade in the tropical desert in summer. So there are unique habitats such as thermal springs and deep sea hydrothermal vents, where average temperature it may exist, or you can say it may elevate or goes up to approximately 100 degrees centigrade. And it is general knowledge that many of the trees, or most of the trees, they cannot grow. So you can take the example of different terrestrial plants like mango, neem trees. They cannot grow in such harsh conditions. So in temperate countries like Canada and Germany, snow leopards are not found, and these are actually not found in the areas of our Indian, you can say, climatic features, which is basically the tropical belt, where the temperature range it lies somehow in the range of 20 to you can say 40 degree, 40 plus. So likewise tuna fish, if we can see the example of the tuna fish, which are rarely caught beyond the tropical latitudes in the ocean. So we can easily understand this, that temperature it actually plays the very basic functions in the metabolic activities and physiological functions of the different organisms. Let's take the another examples of different organisms which can tolerate and thrive in a wide range of temperatures, and therefore they are basically known as eurythermal animals. So a vast majority of them, they are restricted, and when such restrictions are there, where the animal body temperatures they cannot be regulated, or the organisms are not able to manage themselves in a wide range of temperature. So for such narrow range of temperature, these organisms are classified into the another category, and that is stenothermal animals. So the level of thermal tolerance of different species, they determine to a large extent of their geographical distribution, so where they are being present and where we need to locate them. So this is how we can say that the global warming, it can ultimately affect the habitat and ecological niche of the different organisms if the global temperature of the earth, it goes on increasing. So the organisms which are having the very narrow range of temperature tolerance, that is, just now I have told you the name, that is the common term for them is stenothermal animals. They won't be able to survive in such conditions. So it's really concern for us to think on such issues, that why we need to increase the global temperature, that is the how we can reduce the global warming and the conditions which are ultimately elevating the earth temperature. So this is the basic concept which you as a student, you need to think and you need to keep in your mind regarding such abiotic factors which ultimately affects the normal physiological functioning of the different organisms. Now the next abiotic factor is water. So abiotic factors, basically they are the living, non-living parts of the environment, and water is one of such factor that have a major influence on the living organism. Some organisms are basically made up of 95% of their body is made up of water, and so water is also essential because other substance they easily dissolve into it. This allows water to carry nutrients to the cell and waste away from them. So water, it actually plays the significant role in the, you can say, sustenance of the different organisms. So in fact, life on earth, it has originated in water and is unsustainable without water. Its availability is so limited in desert that only special adaptation make it possible for the organisms to live there. And the productivity and distribution of plant is also heavily dependent on water. So most of the organisms which are living in ocean, lakes and rivers should not face any water related problems, but it is not true for aquatic organism. The quality, that is chemical composition, pH of water, it becomes very important. The salt concentration, which is measured in terms of the salinity, in terms of ppm, or you can say parts per thousand, is less than 5 in inland water, and it is 30 to 35 ppt in seas, and it is greater than 100 in some of the hypersaline lagoons. So some organisms, they are tolerant to wide range of salinities, and that's why they are known as euryhaline. This is a term which includes the organism which may show a wide range of adaptability with respect to the saline conditions, but others which are restricted to a narrow range of salinity or tolerance range of the saline water, they are known as stenohaline. So many freshwater animals, they cannot live for a long in a sea water and vice versa because of the osmotic problems. And osmosis, it is the exchange mechanism between the concentration gradient of the solvent and solute with respect to the two different regions where they are lying, and plasma membrane is playing an active role in maintaining such osmoticum inside the cells of the organism. So this was actually the relation of water in connection to the living organisms. Let's see the another abiotic factor, which is light. So light is not only important for the plant for growth, but it is indispensable for the flowering and germination. And for such you can say observation, we have studied these things in 10th class, and the term which was used there was photoperiodism. So based on the photoperiodism, Plants can be further classified into three categories, which we already know that some of them they are long day plants, some of them they are short day plants, and some of them they are day neutral plants. So based on the type of photo periods which should be in interrupted, the flowering patterns will be seen in different plants in different seasons. So it's basically due to the light conditions. So plants use light as an energy source to convert inorganic substances like water, carbon dioxide into organic material like glucose, amino acids and lipids, and this process is basically known as photosynthesis. So light has a unique spectral composition, and since plants produce food through photosynthesis, a process which is only possible when sunlight is available as a source of energy, we can quickly understand the importance of light for the living organisms, particularly for the autotrophs. So many species of small plants, either it could be a herb or shrub, which grow in a particular forest, are adapted to photosynthesis, and they photosynthesize optimally under very low light conditions because they are constantly overshadowed by the tall canopied trees. So many plants they are also dependent on sunlight to meet their photoperiodic requirements for flowering. For many animals too, light is important in that they use the diurnal and seasonal variation in light intensity and duration. So this is photoperiod. I have already told you about this right now, as cues for timing for the foraging and reproductive and migratory activities. So the availability of light on land is closely linked with that of the temperature, since the sun is the source for both. But deep in the ocean, that is ranging from the greater depth, that is 500 meters deep or more than that, the environment is dark and its inhabitants are not aware of the existence of the celestial source of energy, which is known as sun. So the spectral quality of solar radiation is also important for life. The ultraviolet component of the spectrum is very much harmful for many organisms, while it is only the color components which are visible for spectrum, which are available for the marine plants living in the different depth of the ocean. So it's actually the intensity of the light which decides the level of productivity which is being shown by the different range of the plants. So this was all about the necessity and importance of the light as a abiotic factor. Now let's see the next abiotic factor, that is soil. And soil is often considered as an abiotic factor since it is mostly made up of small particles of rock, sand and clay, which is mixed with decomposed plants and animals. Plants use their roots to get water and nutrients from the soil. Biotic factors are all of the living things in an ecosystem, such as plants and animals, and they are actually dependent on the type of soil. So the nature and properties of soil in different plants, it varies, and it is dependent on the climate and the withering process through which the soil is being made from the rocks. Whether soil is dependent on you can say the or it is transported, or it is being formed by the sedimentary rock, soil conditions and type of soil, it decides the different type or varieties of the plant. So various characteristics of the soil, it includes the soil composition, grain size of the soil particles, and the aggregation, which determines the percolation rate and water holding capacity of the soils. So these characteristics, along with the parameters such as pH of the soil, mineral composition and topography, which determines to a large extent the vegetation in any particular area. So this you can easily understand, and you can easily see if you have the atlas, where different type of soils and the type of important commercial crops which is being taken from those soils, it is being easily you can see these informations through the atlas what you are having with respect to the Indian context, that is geographical and distributional pattern of the soil in India with respect to the geography of the India. So this you can visit. So this in turn actually dictates the type of animals that can be supported in the particular type of soil. And similarly, in aquatic environment, the sediment and characteristics often determine the type of benthic animals that can thrive there. So it was all about the different type of abiotic factors which support, and how the different organisms they coordinate with such you can say biotic component, and this biotic and abiotic component of the biosphere, these results into the functionality of the ecosystem. Thank you.